What is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about a very important topic and something everybody's probably thinking about right now, which is how to rank up fast in Fortnite Remix. As you all know, ranks have reset just like every other season. Everybody's on that grind back to Unreal. Some people have already gotten there, but for the rest of you guys that haven't gotten there yet, or you're trying to rank up fast, maybe climb the leaderboards, or just do better than you did last season, today's video is going to help you out. We're going to go over some of the best strategies, best game mode to use, and how to play out each portion of the game in order to rank up as fast as you can. Before we get into it, be sure to drop a like if the video helps you out, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more, and before we get into it, I've got one more thing for you guys. If you're looking to improve at the game, rank up, and dominate the new Fortnite Remix season, let me introduce you to an awesome tool, tapin.gg. Tapin is the go-to solutions for players who want to dominate the OG season. When you sign up on Tapin, you'll get paired with an Unreal ranked teammate in an instant who you can play matches with, 1v1, or whatever else you need to do in order to improve. One of the best features of Tapin is the fact that there's no waiting. You can go to their website right now while you're listening to this, and you can be in game with a pro level player guiding you through every step in the next couple of minutes. And not only is Tapin quick, but it's budget friendly. It has some of the best rates in the entire Fortnite coaching market. As somebody who's been in the Fortnite coaching market for a long time, their rates are actually shocking. And then beyond all that, Tapin was kind enough to give a special deal just for my viewers. If you use my code TECHO25 in all capital letters, then you're going to get 25% off your first 2 orders. So all in all, don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity to learn from some high level players and give yourself a boost during this remix season. Be sure to check out Tapin, which is going to be linked in the description. It'll also be in the pinned comment, or you can just go to the website tapin.gg. And of course, make sure you use my promo code, once again, TECHO25, for a fantastic discount. Thank you, Tapin, once again for sponsoring today's video. So the first big topic everybody debates every single Fortnite season, and the first topic in pretty much every video on how to rank up, let's go ahead and talk about the best game mode to rank up in. And with all the discussions about this pretty much every season, I'm going to make this concept super simple so it's hard to screw up. The best game mode to rank up is whichever game mode you perform best in. There's really not much of a difference in percentage gain versus how you perform based on the mode. For example, if you do equally as good in solos, duos, trios, and squads, you're not going to gain more percentage in a certain game mode. So the best option with that in mind is to base it on your team. If you're a great solo player, that's your specialty, and you do better there than you do in team modes, then go for solos. If you have a duo partner you're great with, maybe somebody you play tournaments with or you've just been playing with for a long time, then you can focus on duos. And of course, the same concept applies if you have a really good trio or squad. For me personally, I typically try to go for trios. I've got a lot of good players to play with, and I think it's a bit less chaotic and more skillful than squads. But also, if one teammate gets sniped or caught up in something, 2v3 is going to be easier than something like a 1v2 in duos, especially because we got a lot of snipers and stuff and RPGs and some spammy type of things. There's going to be a lot of situations where one of your teammates can get smoked, and it's going to be easier for 2 people to pick up the slack than one. That's just my personal opinion though, but once again, it's all personal preference, and I do think it should be pretty intuitive to figure out. Really just think of which game mode you have the most success in. So moving on to the next part of the video, what we're going to be doing is going through early game, mid game, and end game. I'll be giving you guys the strategies, the best tips, and pretty much what you need to do in order to be successful in ranked. So naturally, starting off our phases of the game, let's talk about where to land and how to play out your early game. Now, early game has to be played in a particular way for most players because Epic has a unique way of managing kills and how they influence your rank. As the game goes on, your kills become worth more towards your rank. So if you 50-50 someone off spawn, you're gonna barely gain anything even if you kill them. But if you get an end game kill, for an example, you're gonna gain way more from that. But also, we need to balance this with the fact that if you're going for a big loot spot, then you're probably gonna be contested. So we do want to get good loot, but we also don't want to get destroyed off spawn because we're gonna lose a lot of points. And even if we do get a lot of kills off spawn, it's not gonna gain us a lot. My top recommendation for where to land for duos, trios, and squads is almost always going to be a major POI, aka just any named POI on the map. If you want to play aggressive, get crazy loot, and you accept the risk, you could drop in a hotter spot like Salty Springs or the Dog Pound. On the other hand, if you're less aggressive, then edge map locations with slightly less loot but also less players might be your jam. You can take it a bit easier off spawn, get some good loot, materials, and all that stuff, so when you do get into fights, you're going to be well kitted. Or if you do play more passive and you land at a bigger spot, one thing you and your team could do is land on the edge of the spot. That way, if things are too chaotic or if you end up in shambles, you can escape quickly. It's really up to you what kind of area you want to land in, but that should give you some sort of idea. And then in terms of solos, you also have plenty of options. The big POIs aren't going to serve you as well, since even if you do get a ton of kills, they're really not going to help your rank. But one great way to still get good loot is to land on the outskirts of a POI and third party once the people there are done fighting, or once they're starting to wrap it up. Since they'll probably be in shambles because of the lack of siphon, it should be a pretty quick cleanup if you're a good fighter. You could also just land at a more quiet area like an unnamed spot or a given loot route if you do want to get kitted up more before you get into fights and avoid those early early game deaths almost entirely. There's no way you can guarantee that you're never going to die off spawn, but hopefully by optimizing your drop spot based on your playstyle, your fighting skill, and just your personal preference, you should have a much more successful early game and you should be able to win way more often. Moving on from that and moving swiftly on to mid game, this is, in my opinion, the simplest part of the game. It's where a lot of people seem to struggle the most, but if you're playing it out correctly and you have the right goals in mind, it shouldn't be very difficult. Your goals should be very clear and simple. In mid game, you should have two specific goals: get prepared for end game and get kills as they come. You want to keep upgrading your loadout, whether that's through more looting or fighting other teams or however you can get it. And in terms of fighting, I do recommend you fight during mid game a bit. You do want to get better loot, get some refreshes off of people, but I recommend that you mostly do this on the dead side of zone, also known as the side that people are not rotating into. This will lower the chance that you get third partied and end up in a shambles fight with 2 or 3 other players or teams. Really, the big goal in mid game is to be careful about what fights you take, try to be cognizant of where you're fighting, and always have some sort of purpose for any fight you get into, whether it's to get better loot or to get more materials or whatever it may be. Outside of that, just try to stay ahead on your rotations, set yourself up on elevated areas if you are playing slower, and just be smart about which fights you do or don't take. By rotating intelligently, taking the right fights, and doing all that we talked about, your mid-game experience should be simple but effective and ranked, and you should run into very little problems, if any. And lastly, guys, moving on to the final phase of our game, we've got endgame. Endgame is going to be played a little bit differently depending on your rank and whether you get more or less stacked lobbies. Some of you who are nearing Unreal already, especially early in the season, you might notice that your lobbies are fairly stacked and a lot of people stay alive for endgame. But to make endgame simple, you really only need 3 concepts. Those concepts are rotations, refreshes, and height. Starting with rotations, one of the most important things you can do is have well planned out rotations. Now, rotating in endgame, especially in a stacked lobby, it's not really something I can kind of just talk about in a video and give you a good concept for, because it's going to be very, very situational. If you take 100 different games with a random rotation, almost all of them are going to be entirely different from each other, but the fundamentals still do apply. Try to rotate early if you can do it safely, but if you can't do it safely, then try to time it the best way possible to not get killed. Obviously, carrying things like grapplers or launch pads or anything of that nature, even impulse grenades, having mobility items like that is going to make it a lot easier in endgame. And once we get onto the height aspect too, it's going to make it easier to do that. But moving on to refreshes, which ties in with rotations, in endgame, you want to focus on getting kills when you're running low on HP or materials so you can quote unquote refresh your loadout and get back in the game. Pretty much any time you can see that you're probably going to start running low on something soon, whether it's ammo, materials, HP, shields, you're going to want to start looking for kills. One of the best ways to do this is to rotate early and put pressure on the people rotating into the zone, or you can look on lower players or towards low ground to find people scrambling and just pick them up. And lastly, the final factor we've got is height. This is going to depend heavily on the circumstances, and you're not going to want to go for height every single game, but usually at some point in the later zones, I'd say like 90% of the time, if you have the HP, loadout, and materials for it, and if you carried mobility as we talked about before, you're going to want to take high ground on the lobby and clear out the rest from height. This applies in every single mode: solos, duos, trios, and squads. Height is just the position of power in endgame. This just gives you the best spot to get kills and keeps you safe from anybody on low ground who may be scrambling to get kills. Because the problem is, if you were to stay on low ground, you can get away with it, but it's going to be a lot more risky because you're going to have random people down there scrambling, people that ran out of materials or ran out of HP, and they're just going to jump in your box and try to get a last minute kill on you. You don't want to deal with that. And while all that's going on, you're probably going to be getting sprayed from high ground if you decide to take low ground. So in general, almost always you do want to go for height. And honestly, guys, if you follow all those factors, if you have your rotations, refreshes, and height all dialed in, then you should have a successful and smooth endgame almost every time. But with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to rank up super fast in Fortnite Remix. Overall, hopefully this helped you guys and gave you guys a good idea for what game modes you want to play, how you want to play out each phase of the game and kind of line up your strategy, and some of the best tactics you can use to make your ranking up process a lot smoother. If you guys found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more, and as always, it's super appreciated if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free for you, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who uses it. And one last thing, guys, make sure to check out tapin.gg. It's a fantastic way to get some high-level coaching and give yourself a boost this season. Once again, the link is going to be down in the description and in the pinned comment. And make sure to use code all capitals TECHO25 to get 25% off your first 2 orders. With that said, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.